After the heartbreaking loss of their young son, his parents were left in profound grief when they were unexpectedly given a pet. As they delved into the reason behind this surprising gesture, their shock only deepened. Ever since Aiden Pankey was little, he really wanted a pet. Every week, he would ask his parents if he could have one. He felt jealous of his friends who had pets. When he visited his friends who had dogs or cats, he spent a lot of time playing with the animals and liked them more than his friends sometimes. But no matter how hard he tried to convince his parents, they said no. They told him their home was too small, and he wasn't ready for a pet yet. They said maybe in the future when he was more responsible. Aiden even promised to do everything he could to take care of a pet, but still, the answer was always the same. Aiden loved learning about animals in school, and sometimes he forgot to do his chores at home. However, as the years went by, Aiden showed that he was growing into a responsible young boy. He was more disciplined, reliable, and mature. His grades picked up, and just after his 10th birthday, Aiden's parents told his grandmother that she could pick out a pet for Aiden. There was only one condition. It had to be a small one. His grandmother was overjoyed, heading to the pet store, thinking about how happy Aiden would be to have a new friend, but if she knew what would happen just days later, she wouldn't have been so excited. In fact, she would have turned the car around and called the police. But she didn't have an inkling of what was to come. When she arrived at the store, she was greeted by an attendant who ran her through what kind of animals were common for a boy of Aiden's age. A goldfish was an easy choice, but it was hard to imagine Aiden having too much of a connection with one. After chatting with the worker for a few minutes, the grandmother was asked if she would consider a rat. She was taken aback. At first, she thought her hearing was playing up again, but no, she had heard that a rat as a pet. She had never imagined such a thing, but as the attendant explained to the grandmother, rats were very similar to mice and had been getting more and more popular with children. When she was shown the red enclosures, she started to see the appeal. Inside a large box, they ran around on a paper floor, through a small maze, and played with each other just like mice. As she watched them, she started to think of them as cute. It was enough to convince the grandmother that it might be worth a try. She was told that if it didn't work out and the parents didn't approve of her choice, they would be able to bring it back. However, tragically, that would be the least of their worries. The grandmother paid for the rat, signed some papers, and headed back to her son's house, where he was waiting with his wife, just like Grandma had been just an hour earlier. The parents were shocked by the idea of adopting a rat. Weren't these the rodents that people were always trying desperately to get rid of? Luckily, Aiden was still at school, so they still had a couple of hours to decide, but after the grandmother explained what the shop attendant had told her, they slowly warmed to the idea of giving it a try. Aiden's parents researched online about what they should be feeding the rats and found that most vegetables and fruits would be enough. It all seemed pretty simple, and as they waited for their son to arrive, even they became excited. When Aiden arrived home from school, he had no idea what he was walking into. As usual, he greeted his parents and grandmother before settling down by the television to watch one of his favorite programs. He wasn't expecting a surprise because his birthday was still a couple of days away, and they had already planned all the details of the upcoming party with his friends. However, his parents encouraged him to go and look in his room. At first, Aiden didn't take the hint, but by the tone of their voices, he slowly understood that there might be something waiting for him in there. He stood up, turned off the television, and rushed to open his bedroom door. There, sitting on top of his desk, was a big box. As Aiden edged closer, he began to make out every different part of the enclosure. He had to kneel on his chair to look inside, which is when he saw the rat. He let out a scream of excitement, and his parents in the next room smiled at each other. "Mom, Dad," Aiden called out. He wanted them to come and see for themselves. When they arrived, he already had the rat in one hand, stroking it with his other. Aiden thanked his parents again and again. They had finally trusted him with getting a pet that was the best birthday present ever. The boy spent the entire afternoon playing with his rat, and just that once, his parents allowed him to neglect his homework. Aiden named the female rat Sandy and started fantasizing about the day he would let her meet a male rat to have babies with. His parents were less than enthusiastic about the idea, but let it slide, hoping that their son would soon forget all about his plans for his pet's future. In the meantime, they took him shopping for accessories for Sandy's cage, which Aiden insisted on paying for with his own pocket money. That choice convinced his parents that he was indeed mature enough to handle a pet and all the responsibilities that came with it. They went back to the pet shop the grandmother had bought the rat from, and the attendants were glad to see that the boy was already in love with his rat. They knew that he would take good care of his pet. Unfortunately, the boy didn't get long to enjoy his new responsibility. Not long after visiting the pet store, Aiden began having stomach pains. At first, he ignored them because he was so excited, but they were quickly getting worse, and he complained to his parents. They wasted no time in realizing how serious the situation was and rushed him straight to the hospital. They thought he had eaten something bad at school or that he had developed some acute form of flu. When they arrived, the doctors gave Aiden some medicine to help with the pain and asked his family routine questions about his latest activities. The parents didn't recall anything out of the ordinary, but right before the doctors left the room, they offhandedly mentioned the present Aiden's grandmother had gotten for him a few hours earlier. The doctors drew some blood and took some samples, and an hour later, they were back with the results. The news wasn't good. Aiden had developed an infection called Streptobacillus moniliformis. That didn't mean anything to the parents until one of the doctors explained that it was commonly known as rat bite fever. They couldn't believe it. The new pet they had bought for their son had sent him to the hospital. The rat must have bitten the kid while playing, and he had probably kept that small incident from his parents to prevent them from worrying. Because, let's face it, which pet doesn't bite or scratch sometimes? Sadly, Aiden didn't get better. His body was getting worse because of the infection, and he passed away early the next morning. His parents and grandmother were inconsolable. They didn't know what to do. However, their sadness eventually turned into action. They wanted to find out what happened and hold the pet store accountable. They went to the store and angrily told them what had happened to Aiden. The store was about to sell 5 more rats from the same family as Sandy, but when Aiden's parents asked them to stop, the owner said no. So the family decided to take legal action. With the help of their lawyer, the local animal control agency, and the police, they were able to stop the store from selling those rats. Because of their hard work, quick thinking, and caring nature, the grieving parents prevented 5 other families from going through the same tragedy. Aiden's death was so sad and unfair, but his sacrifice helped save several other people who will always remember him as the sweet boy he was. What a sad turn of events. What you think of this story? Let us know in the comments section. Thank you.